Hi everybody, welcome to Caketastic Cakes. It's Jen and I'm going to show you how I put together this cake using edible glass and gardenia flowers. And if you see me using anything you could use, check the link in the description below. It should be able to help you out. Alright, I'm going to start with my isomalt. It is these candy crystals, if you don't know about them, that you use to make edible gems and fake glass and that kind of thing. And I've never messed around with it before, but I wanted to try it out. So I got the kind that all you have to do is heat it and use it. So I popped it in the microwave for the amount of time and stir and stir and stir. And I had my cookie sheet ready with my tin foil on it because I was just going to make some glass because I have no real experience with this at all. So I stirred it till it was nice and runny. And I realized that I should have, probably let it sit a little more or something. I don't know. There were a lot of air bubbles. So once I was ready, I thought it was good and melted. I poured it out on my cookie sheet and it turned really thick and really cold really fast. Like I was kind of surprised. I've heard a lot of warnings about isomalt and how it'll burn you and it'll stick to your skin and everything else. Well, you can see it's already becoming very thick, so maybe I needed to heat it up more. But again, there were all these little air bubbles in it, and I've seen people who have worked with this stuff, and it's just perfectly clear, nary a bubble to be seen. But then you see, like, look, you've got all these little, like, strings coming out that I thought was kind of cool. And again, I never messed with it before, so I was like, that's interesting. But I wanted to spread my glass out thinner, so I tried to spread it, but it was too late. Like, I guess because my cookie sheet was cold, it cooled it off so much it made it too thick, and I was going to end up, like, damaging it, what little I had. So I just started playing with the stuff that was still in the cup. I was just pulling it, gently pulling it, and it just kept coming and coming, like spider silk coming out of a spider. It was just really neat, and I made this really long thread out of it. I just kept going with it. I ended up trying to reheat it a little more, whatever was left, because the coating left inside the glass was really thick. And so, yeah, if you guys have worked with isomalt before and you have any tips, leave it in the comments below because I'd love to work with it again. Look how quickly it set. It was really fast. I don't know if that's normal or not. So I gave it a little bit of time and it solidified. So there are my pieces. I just made pieces. You can see the fibers that I had pulled at the top of the screen on the side too. So there's my big piece. I was real happy with that, even though it doesn't look like anything. And again, it's full of air bubbles. So I wanted to see what would happen. So I bashed the one piece with the back end of my knife there. This one I'm using a pizza roller to kind of scour it. And that worked really well because I put just this groove down and I was able to snap it nice and clean. I was impressed. Doing the same thing again here. I just wanted to see what would happen again. I was just playing. So maybe this doesn't interest you guys, but it makes for some pretty effects, I gotta say. Like, the cake came out really pretty. Anyway, so I'm just messing with my pieces here. Got my different sizes. I tried breaking it. I tried smashing it. I tried making, controlled cuts. And it's fun to work with. It's a little sticky, I will say that. A little sticky with just your hand, but it's fun to work with. Now, since I was going to just be putting jaggedy pieces in my cake, I have some edible gold shimmer there that I am scooping and applying. And I'm just going around the edges of the edible glass shards that I've got there, the isomalt shards, just to make it have some color, kind of define the lines. And it looked really pretty. I was really happy with it. And yeah, I was just messing around. I wanted to see what would happen. So I went over the sides and kind of onto the front a little bit. And maybe because it was just clear, I didn't have any color in it. It made it look really pretty. I was very happy with it. So I did it with all my pieces. And if you're going to do jaggedy pieces like I've got here, it seems like the more rough and jaggedy, the more interesting looking it is. The smoother ones are very pretty, don't get me wrong. I personally kind of feel like they might be a little more boring. So as I have those sitting to the side, I took my fibers that I pulled and I was just messing with them. Again, I've never done this before, so I just wanted to see what would happen. So I decided to spray them with an edible gold shimmer spray that you can buy in the can. And it took, the color took to the fibers, but they also got damaged. I guess because they were so thin, introducing that little bit of moisture that's in the spray caused the real thin parts to break apart. So I ended up with like a lot more fractured little splinter pieces. than I had before, but the larger pieces took the color and held up. So, it was still neat to try, neat to see what would happen. And now I just am painting some gold over all my little scraps and splinters because this stuff was expensive, so I was using it all. Okay, now I'm going to show you how I made the gardenia flowers. I did it without using any floral tape or wire or anything. This is just using a rose set. All right, now, in order to make gardenia flowers, you're going to basically make a rose. You're just going to have the petals more twisted. So just like a rose, you're going to start with your little Hershey Kiss shaped piece of gum paste there that you can see over on the side, the white one. I used just my regular rose cutting thing, cutting size, the smaller size, to cut out my 5 petals here. And there's also going to be a little bit of a difference too. We're going to separate the petals, and I'm going to use 7 of them at first, and then we're going to make another 12. So there are a ton of petals on this thing, but it's worth it. They come out really pretty. Now I made my one flower here. As you can see, I've got it on my sponge. I'm rolling out the edges, flaring out the petals. I'm making them as thin and wavy and wrinkly and textured kind of as I can. I'm going around each one to kind of spread it out. I'm going along the edges, and I'm just, just like you would for a rose, basically. There's nothing different here yet. Okay, I've gone ahead. I've finished all of the petals. I've flared them all out, as you can see. Made sure they're nice and thin and wavy. And now I'm doing, like I said before, I'm just cutting them all out. I cut the center out so it's not even like pointy or anything. I want to make sure I've got a nice shape on the bottom, because at the bottom it's a little harder. I'm sure if you guys have used these little flower kits, then you know what I'm talking about here. But okay, now I've got my 5 petals, right? The center's gone, they're all individual. I'm pressing them on this little piece of mold that I have that makes veins in petals and flower petals. You don't need it, honestly, you really don't. It makes a pretty flower either way. I went ahead and used it because I had it, so why not? And now pay attention to how I'm wrapping this. The first flower petal gets put on so that it's wrapped around the bud, the tip there, and then flared out. And now the other one is wrapped around and flared out at a 90-degree angle from the first one. This one, I'll just put a little bit of water on the edge of the petal, just the edge, and that's what I did with the other 2. I'm going to overlay it just a little bit, and then I'm going to have it coming out. It's supposed to be a little bit more 90 degrees than that, but it kind of got a little soggy on me. Okay, you can see I added my 4th petal, and now you can see it's already starting to create a spiral. I'm using my paintbrush handle there to just press down in the center to make sure that, my little Hershey Kiss starting point is completely closed. And now I add a little bit of water to the bottom of the petal and lay it down against the base of the bulb that we got going there. This next petal, I'm going to tuck it between the first 2. I'm going to then take that outside petal and anchor its bottom only so that the top is still kind of unfurled, and just keep going. Okay, it was only 2 petals, or 1 petal, because we used the 4 already, and we had 5, so I'm making a couple more. Here are my 2 more. I just went ahead and cut them off from the rest. There's no point in me flaring them out yet because I am not ready yet. So again, you're going to start with 7 for the center part of the flower. I did the same thing as before. Take my petals, flare them out, roll it out, thin the edges, ruffle them up a bit, and then I'll be ready to add them on. Okay, you can see I trimmed off the little tips just like before. I'm just pressing them, onto that mold there to make a little bit of petal veins. And now, just like before, I stick it between the 2 petals, press down the bottom of that outside one, and do the same thing. Press it between the 2, anchor the outside, and I'm also going to anchor this one as well, just because it's my last one. That's number 7. So I've got 7 petals now around the center of my flower, and now I'm just kind of working them a little, fluff them out. Okay. This one is going to be a lot of petals. I'm going to do just like before. You can see I'm just saving time by cutting them out off of the main base. I don't need that. I just need those petals. And just like before, I'm going to put them on my sponge and roll them all out. I'm going to do 12 of these. It's a lot, so 12 of them. And you're also going to use the next step up size in your rose cutting set. So you start with the smaller one in the first bunch and then move up. You're going to do the same thing with gardenias. You're going to start with the smaller one and move up. And once you have the veins of the petals pressed in, I have a whole bunch of spoons, and I took my petals, as you saw, and put it on my spoon and just kind of crinkled up the edge a little bit and put it aside to let it set for a while. I'm going to do the same thing again now. I'm going to cut out another set of 5. I'm going to ruffle them up just like before. I'm going to use my little stamp press thing to make the veins of the petals on it. And then I'm going to take my spoons and put a petal on it and let it drape, let it flop, let it wrinkle right over it. Now when they've had some time to set but they're not all the way firm, I'm going to start applying them back to my main bunch of flower petals here. I just paint water on the outside, put a flower petal in place. Next, paint the next step, put a flower petal in place. Make sure as you're doing this, you just keep going around and around and around because gardenias have a spiral effect. They are not quite like a rose. You have to have a good, twist going. They are very ruffly, very thick, very I was going to say floppy, but it's not floppy. It's just very full and very wrinkly and, just a lot of motion going on. They're not necessarily a clean, precise flower. They are a lacy, frilly flower, okay? So that's what we're going for. And use all those 12 pieces. I have my little flower cup there that I put it in to rest and to hold it while it sets. And believe it or not, that will set. That big mess that I made of just slapping petals on the outside will set all together. And when it hardens, they are beautiful. They make a beautiful flower. Now I'm going to show you how to make one that's opened all the way so you can see the inside. I start with my little teardrop, but this time it's kind of like a golden yellow. I use my scissors to snip 3 pieces, you see? So it's got 3 little pieces. I pressed them down and kind of like pinched them together so now they fold together. And then at the seam at the bottom there on each side, I'm going to take another trim, take another little snip. So now I've got 6 little snips. Those I'm going to leave sticking out a little bit. And now I'm going to make some teeny tiny petals for the outside of my open, I don't even know what that stamen, piston, I don't know. It's been too long. Science was too long ago for me to remember exactly. My center, my yellow center of my flower. So as you see, I just cut out a bunch of small circles. I just smushed them down with my finger. I was like, oh yeah, I'll just use my sponge. You don't need to. I just smushed them with my finger. And just by smushing them with with the little prints thing there that I got, made it flat and frilly enough that, yeah, I worked with it. So I'm smushing it, as you say, placing it in between the little bottom ones that stick out there. And then I'm going to add a few more to the other sides to just kind of fill it in. See that? And once you get them all in place, I ended up using 6 if you were following along with that and you need the exact number. I'm just using 6, sticking them in place, a little bit of water, and that's the beginning of our completely open gardenia. Okay, now we're going back just like before. I'm going to take my petals that I made before. This is the smaller of the 2 that you use. If you're going to use your rose stamp kit, it's the smaller one again. And I'm not going to worry about, wrapping it around real tight, because the idea is this one has fully and completely opened. So I'm just going to, again, carefully put them into place, wrinkle them up a little bit. You don't want it looking too perfect. But I'm going to keep putting them in kind of in a spiral effect again. Because, again, gardenias are all about that spiral, and you don't want to lose it. So you can see I'm kind of like tucking it in a little bit. Now I'm trying to go back and wrinkle up the petals a little bit more because they were very, very perfect petals. And you want them to maintain that little bit of roughness. So that was the 4. You can see just like before I put the initial 4 on. Now I'm going in between them to put the extra 3. That'll be my 7. And then I'm going to make 12 more of the larger petals and stick them on just exactly like before. So the only real difference here is just your center starting point. Otherwise, you're going to make it just like before. So there's nothing new here. It's just exactly the same. You start with your 4 around your base, add your extra 3, move to the larger size, make another 12, just like I'm doing here. That was just more of the 12, just exactly the same. I rolled out the petals, stamp them out with the veins, wrinkle them up and put them on my spoons. And the spoons are actually pretty nice because they cause the petals to droop and move in ways that you just can't replicate normally. And depending on how you angle it, where you angle it, it'll give you a different looking petal each time. Now, once they've had some time to set so that they're pretty firm but not 100%, I'm going to add some water to the base, just like before, and start applying them around my flower. And as you can see, these things kind of, until they really set permanently, they're very floppy, they're kind of messy, it might fall apart on you. Don't get discouraged, because if it does, that just means you've got more texture and character going on in your flower. It will be lovely. You can do this, okay? Everybody has spoons. If you do roses, then you know what I'm talking about with these two different sizes. And if not, you can very easily get a 5-petaled set from the store, and you can do this yourself. Okay, I'm going to show you one more thing here about the flowers anyway. I'm going to show you how to make a bud, just a regular old bud. I make a giant Hershey Kiss shape. You see I've got my lines that I made with my knife blade going straight up to the center. Try to make them connect, which I didn't quite. And once you get them all there, very gently twist. That's it. You made a bud, a gardenia bud. Just give it a very gentle twist. You might realize you're going to lose some of the little lines. No problem. Just take your knife and very gently and carefully go back over them and follow the way it curves, and you will have a lovely little gardenia bud. That's it. Like, that's seriously it. Make sure the lines come up to the top, though. That is important too. And if you make a few of these buds, it's a very, very easy way to fill in some space with a little bit more white. All right, one last thing now I'm going to show you is how to make the leaves for the gardenia. Again, I have this kit that I had bought, a long time ago, and it has these different leaf shapes. This is for the large rows, but gardenia leaves aren't all that big. That's about a 2-inch cutter that I just measured out there, so I'm trimming down my leaves to make them shorter, so they're just as fat. But I put a little mark on it and then just trim at the bottom. And there you go. You got a shorter leaf. Nice and easy, right? But it still has a nice serrated edge and everything that the leaf typically has. The leaves of the gardenia are also dark. They are dark and rich and glossy. So I'm going to show you what I did for that too. I'm using the other part of my stamp set here that is for leaves. It puts veins on leaves, and I love it. I think it's a nice little easy thing that I can do. If you don't have this, just use your knife and make some marks. That'll work too. Now I'm letting my leaves dry. I have this little drying thing here that's all wavy, just so that it will be, again, the leaves will be dried in different shapes. This is all gum paste also, by the way. I just wanted to make sure you knew that. And for the final step, I'm spraying them with this edible gloss. It adds a shine. It's in the candy makers section of the stores. So just put all that aside and let it dry. Let it all set up. For the cake itself, I just had little splotches. It's just buttercream coated. It has little splotches of green down on the sides, as you see. I took some gold sugar crystals, poured them around the top because I was going with gold. Gold was my color theme. I shoved a couple pieces, or at least one big piece, of my isomalt crystal in, and then I leaned a gardenia flower kind of up against it. So I took another big crystal, leaned another flower against it. Since I don't have any floral wires or anything like that on the back of these flowers, I knew I was going to set them on top of the cake, but they did need a little bit of support, so I'm just kind of cheating and propping. I'm just propping them up against whatever I need. I move stuff around. I have some flowers in there. There's a little flower bud. Here's some more of the crystals I'm sticking in, some more of the leaves. They're nice and shiny. They did lose a little bit of the gloss, I gotta say, so I went and put a second coat on them. And over time, I suspect that, if you did it the day or two before, you probably have to reapply. But I gotta say, I was happy with it. I had never used that before either. This cake was just full of firsts for me. So I got some more of my little glass shards in there. I got those fun fibers that I just dropped on top and figured, why not? Because it's fancy now. It's a fancy cake. So yes, it's very fancy. We've got glass shards. We've got glass fibers. We have gardenia flowers. There you go. So I hope you enjoyed watching me mess around with this cake. I hope you found it helpful. Please like and subscribe because it does help me out. Check out my many other videos. And as always, thank you for watching Caketastic Cakes.